You're listening to the How in the World podcast, where we tackle global issues and discuss how we as Christians can make a lasting difference. My name is Rini Sharest, and I pastor in the heart of the Central Valley in beautiful California. I'll be sitting down with guests from every walk of life to discover innovative ways that we can make an impact. This is the How in the World podcast. Hi, I'm Rini Sharest, and welcome to How in the World podcast. We talk about subjects and people and industries from all over the world. And today I'm excited to have my special guest, Joe Martinez. Joe, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Rini.
Joe's background is he's been in insurance for over 30 years, and he started his own company 17 years ago, and he has an incredible life story. And when I heard it, I thought, this is the guy that needs to be on our podcast. And I just want to ask you a couple of questions. And really, it's exciting what has happened in your life and what is happening in your life. And so let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your background.
So my background is I was born and raised in Ag, west side, the real west side, I call it, Fireball, Mendota, Dos Palos. So it's west side of Fresno. Grew up in the Central Valley pretty much, but when I was in Fireball, Dos Palos, my dad was a supervisor for a large farm, so the whole family worked. I think I started working probably in the fields when I was 9 or 10, and I wanted to go out there because everybody was out there. So I basically did that all the way to the age of 15 or 16, then started different jobs, went to school, a little town called Orloma that nobody's ever heard of. Had a school that's now closed.
Where is Orloma?
Yeah, my point. So Orloma, from kindergarten to 8th grade was like 200 kids. And so you know where Fireball is?
Yeah.
You know where Dos Palos is?
Yes.
And you know where Interstate 5 is?
Yes.
The triangle, right? So it's like right in the middle. It's on Russell Avenue. It was on Russell Avenue. And it was just a little farm school, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah. And
is that where you got your special name, Joe Martinez? You told a story recently about that.
So I was just having this conversation. So the story goes, because it was a school in primarily a farm area, 90% of the kids were Hispanic. Okay. And so in my kindergarten class, there was Jose, and Jose. And she said, this is not going to work. Miss Chuck was her name, by the way.
Miss Chuck.
And so Miss Chuck lined us up and she goes, okay, you're Jose, you're Joseph, and you're Joe. And from that day on, my name changed to Joe Martinez.
You're now Joe.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. That was first grade?
Kindergarten.
Oh, kindergarten.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so you grew up out there, and then what drove you, though, towards this industry, the insurance industry?
I just had that conversation. I interviewed a gal this morning, and so I always ask them, what questions do you have for me?
Right.
And typically they stumble, but she was sharp. She said, well, how did you get into the industry? And I'm like, oh, well. And so I started thinking, I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember. I was working retail in shopping centers, and I was working in Modesto, I remember. And I was kind of done with the retail scene because when everybody was on vacation, I was working, right?
Yeah.
So I was burned out, but I noticed my insurance agent, the guy never seemed stressed out. And he was like homeowners and auto. So I talking to him a little bit. And so I left that industry, and then I came to Fresno, which was an interesting story. And somehow I got hooked up with an insurance company, which is Metropolitan P&C, Metropolitan Life. Well, they started a division called P&C, which is homeowners and auto. Sent me to Atlanta, Georgia for like 2 or 3 weeks, came back, had the lapel, looking sharp, started the career. 2 weeks later, they closed all their California offices.
Wow.
Offered me White Plains, New York or Arizona. And that was my intro to insurance. And then from there, I went in to work for Cal Farm and progressed my career.
So you kind of grew up in ag, and the company you started, DLL Insurance, they're not just they don't just do typical homeowners insurance. They do a lot of other things too.
No, we primarily do large commercial, large employers, a lot of employees. I'd say probably 70% of our book is ag or ag related, and then industrial. And we have some self-insured products, some different stuff. And our area is California, Arizona. So we're all over the place. And it's been successful. It's been successful in the insurance industry. And so enjoying it to this point.
You know, the listeners, they love to hear about different vocations. And with the internet and social media and everything being online, tell me the dramatic changes that the biggest changes that have happened in your industry in the last like 15 years.
So let me tell you, when I kind of rewind, right? And I'd say, and I've been offered, we do family, we do other businesses than insurance, right? But when I'm talking to people that want to get into the industry, this is my pitch, right? I'm like, okay, so understand something. We don't have any inventory, right? It's residual income.
Correct.
And the government makes you buy it. Name me something else where those three things line up. It's very difficult, right?
Right.
Because a real estate agent, I mean, the inventory is not him, but once he sells a house, he makes his commission. Next time he has to go and find another house to sell.
Yeah.
Ours, when you sell insurance, you're selling basically that policy. It's like selling that house every year over and over and over. So it's residual income. So those three things line up. It's not the easiest thing, but for those people that are successful in it, very rarely have I seen somebody's like business go belly up because of the industry.
Would you consider it a family-friendly industry for someone who's trying to raise a family, or mom or dad? And
well, interesting you ask, because my wife and kids were having that conversation, and I was so when my kids were growing up, I was so into building my business.
Yeah.
And I used to spend nights, in hotels or whatever.
Yeah.
And so in that aspect, you don't have to do that. You don't have to go outside of your area, but that's how I built my book. And so that was a little difficult. So I think once I hit about 45 or so, I was like, okay, I'm done. No more nights in hotels.
So you decided to kind of stay home or send out.
I'm like, if I'm going to go see an account, it better be an account that I can go see and get back home for dinner. Now I say that, and tonight I'm spending the night in Sonoma, right?
Yeah.
There are exceptions.
Sonoma's not a bad place to spend the night.
Well, it's not a vacation. It's,
yeah. And so you obviously 17 years, your own company, you did well. You did well. And so tell me about what changes you've made in the last 5 years in I mean, your lifestyle, your changes of do you still own your company, or what have you done recently?
So in the last 4 years, I sold my company, equity in my company. There's a lot of companies going out and buying industries, right, and creating. And so they came to me. I had no reason to sell. Financially, we were good. We had no debt. The Crown Financial plan, right? No debt.
Awesome.
We were doing great financially. I was pretty much free to do what I wanted with the company. And then a company came, I was kind of referred, we had a conversation, and the multiples that they were offering to buy your company were just so advantageous that it was hard to say no. But this was the key for me. It wasn't that so much is I had a question, and my questions were, if I have to fill out reports for you, like on a monthly basis or budgets, I'm out. And if you're going to tell me what to do on a daily basis, I have to check in, check out, I'm out. And so their whole pitch was, hey, listen, you know how to create revenue. You know how to create a successful business. All we want you to do is continue that growth. We're going to give you some bonuses if you do. We just want the revenue that comes from that.
Okay.
And so it's been pretty close to 4 years, and they've been in my office once since then.
Wow.
And so that has worked well for me.
And so why did you choose, we had this conversation, and I loved your answer, by the way. Why did you choose not to retire completely?
So I think I told you about, I correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a book that I read, and it was called Halftime.
Yeah.
We had a conversation about that. And anytime I'm going through something in business, I pick up books, read, have conversations, and just kind of pick people's brains to see, okay, what other people doing, right? I had a big fear of, okay, I sell my business, financially we're fine, but now what?
Right.
It's kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
And so when I was reading this book, there was a chapter, and it came to the point, it came to a section that said, be careful if you sell your business and go into retirement, because if you retire, nobody's going to return your calls. And I was like, oh, crap, right? I was like, wait a second, that's true, because I remember guys retiring in my industry.
Yeah.
They call me guilty. I didn't call them back, or I didn't call them back right away, or I didn't take that call as serious, right?
Right.
It's different. And so I didn't want that to
Wow.
happen.
So,
By the way, are people returning your calls?
all the time.
Because you did change careers.
I did. And they're like, what, you're not building anymore? Are you kidding me? So, yeah, they were not happy when I went from construction to pastoring.
Right.
Because trying to find a contractor today, things are crazy. But you make a good point, because we have this American quote unquote dream.
Mm.
You just got to make a lot of money. Your life will be happy. Your marriage will be wonderful. Flowers fall from heaven, and you have all the free time to fish. And tell me, is that what happened when you sold your company?
Well, I knew retirement in like what traditional people think of retirement wasn't for me, right?
But why? Why wasn't it
Well,
for you?
some things I learned. You go on vacation, right? When everybody goes on vacation. So you go to a different city, everybody's outside, everybody's fishing, everybody's on the, strip or the dock, and everybody has smiling faces because they're on vacation, right? Then vacation's over. And then you go back on a Tuesday or Wednesday, there's nobody out there. And I was like, okay, so this is what it really looks like. And now what, right? And for me, anyhow, I what I enjoy the most is waking up in the morning, getting my coffee, and head to work or drive somewhere to
Right.
accomplish something.
Yeah.
If I don't have that drive, it's very difficult for me.
So you still have a drive to accomplish something.
Yeah, so I've been,
It doesn't go away.
No, I've been, praying about it, and I think, who was I having a conversation? Oh, I was having a conversation with some people in the class
Yeah.
that we were in,
MTech.
MTech,
Yeah.
and I was thinking, what's the next game, right? What's the next
Yeah.
career? I always thought, I don't want to die and have on my tombstone, great insurance agent,
Right.
right? What else is there?
Well, obviously you were a great insurance, and you still are. And that leads me to my next question. I love this question because I get so many answers from people that have kind of done well in their industry. Do you think you're successful?
I think moderately successful.
How do you define success?
So success, there's financial success, which is one thing, right? There's success in your marriage. There's success as a father. There's so many different aspects of success. Success as a pastor, success, right? And so moderately, I would say, but I think there's a lot more to accomplish. I don't think there's a pinnacle. I don't think that exists for me anyway, of like, I don't want my name in a building when I die.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Allison and I were walking by Clovis Community, because we used to live out that way. And I looked at a building and I thought, and there was a guy's name on there, right, that he had donated. And I thought, nobody knows who this guy is and nobody cares, right?
Yeah,
Nobody cares.
it's true.
And I thought, well, that's not it.
Right.
And so for me, success for me is day by day. Do I have success today in the things that are in front of me? That's the only way I can define it is, was I successful today?
And do you feel like you're still on the road of pursuing success as you see it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What does success mean for personal relationships?
Personal relationships is for the longest time, and when I first became a believer, it was kind of brought to my attention is, Joe, 1,000 people, and you can sit down, have a cup of coffee with them for an hour, and you can call them tomorrow and they'd answer your calls. 1,000 people like that. About 10 people, a little deeper level, and about 2 people in a real deep level, right? And so now I'm trying to look past all the superficial stuff and get to know people at a different level. Yeah, which is not easy for me.
So transitionally for you and your wife, the things have pretty much the day-to-day pretty much stayed the same.
From
selling your company, but to still managing your company, you pretty much have the same
routine.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, pretty much. We still live in a 4-bedroom house. Might be a little fancier, but it's still 4 bedrooms.
But you don't have chickens though
anymore. No.
I'm
My
sorry.
wife.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, exactly. My wife is disappointed.
I'm sure your neighbors are happy though.
Your wife is living my wife's dream.
Yes. Sending him home with.
By the way, half of the advice that I give your wife about chickens is just stuff I make up on the fly. I really don't have that insight. She thinks I do, but I really don't.
Herd her chickens. She loves those chickens.
Yeah.
So tell me, you could go on the internet, and there are literally millions and millions of people trying to sell something, get rich. They're driving a big car. They got a sexy woman there. They're showing a big house, and people are just pouring after money. Everybody wants success, but as a pastor, they end up coming to me when they're broken, they're on cocaine, they've divorced their wife. It's like, I don't think that's done much good for them. So talk to me about in real life, like, what are the pitfalls of actually having your dreams come true financially?
I think I was on that wheel, right?
Right.
It's like I need to accumulate these things. I think we had this conversation that I'm a car guy. I like cars. Right. Other stuff just really doesn't interest me that much. I've always been a car guy, and it's not because I want to impress you with what I'm driving. It's because I like driving it, right? And it can vary from a station wagon of a certain year to a high-end car. It just depends.
Station wagon? Where do you find a station wagon?
Well, that's
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, the old 300 Mercedes, Ds, the diesel ones, and some of the just stuff like that.
So what's your top favorite classic cars?
My first car when I was 15, I bought a wrecked '69 Camaro.
Ooh, nice.
Worked on that for about 2 years and drove it to high school. So I'd say that is probably my...
What'd you pay for? Do you remember?
Yes, I paid $1,000, and we towed it to my buddy's house and worked on it there and stuff, and all my money went into that. It was super cool. Loved it. And so it's funny story, side story is Allison, my wife, she knows I love Camaros, right? And I wanted one. And so we're in Michigan, and some of her family's into cars. And so I look in the garage and I see the taillight of a Camaro. And I said, ooh, man, I think that's a 68 Camaro, right? Screen, beautiful car. So I compliment the guy on it. We talk about this and that, whatever. Now I'm turning 50, right? Not now, but I was turning 50. And she got me a surprise. And it was that car.
No.
It was that car. So it was delivered, really cool.
Oh, my goodness.
But what I didn't have the heart to tell her, honey, I'm really into 69 Camaros, not 68 Camaros. And so finally I ended up telling her, honey,
Joe.
Finally I ended up telling her I sold it to a friend of mine. But yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
It's true. My first car was a 1970 Le Mans 350 Sport.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the one I want. It's the only one I want.
2 or 4 barrel,
Yeah, it was a great car.
1970, 3-speed or 4-speed. I'm not sure.
Bought it for $350, sold it for $850.
No, I take that back. I bought that for $300.
I was going to say,
$300.
You paid premium for
$300.
Yeah.
$300. Yeah.
That's nice. But we digress. So let's talk.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about some of the pitfalls that you see that happen to people on their pursuit to, quote unquote success.
I mean, some of the ones that. So I think what happens is success financially, right? There's a couple of pitfalls. I think I mentioned this the other day, that money has a way of robbing you that you really don't even see it happening. I think I talked about it. It's like when my wife and I first went to a nice steak restaurant.
Right.
And we were broke when we were married, right?
Right.
And so we go to this,
remember.
I'm like, man, we're going to celebrate. So we go to, probably at that time it was DeChico's, right? And and so we
It's a
sit
little
down.
cheapy Italian restaurant here in town.
It used to be big time now.
It was big time.
And so we go there, we eat, and I order steak and a glass of wine. We don't even know what we're ordering.
Right.
And so we talk about it to our friends. Hey, and it probably wasn't DeChico's, but
Right.
hey, we went to this place and
Yeah.
remember it, and we talked about it for a week, right?
Yeah.
Well, now literally you can go to any steakhouse in the world,
Right.
and you're not that impressed
Right.
because you've lost that wow, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of steals that from you. And the Lord's been showing me too is, hey, now you can have this car. And I'm like, well, Lord, there ain't much faster you can go. What you're going to pay an extra 100,000 to go another
Right.
2 seconds faster?
Right.
It doesn't. And so you get to the point where you start losing that, and it gets a little
Yeah.
scary, knowing that all this stuff you built, it's going to go away. All this material stuff doesn't really have that much value. People aren't
Right.
really looking at you saying, what a cool guy, he drives that, or what a cool family, they live in this house.
Yeah.
Nobody really cares. And so I think you run into that pitfall of thinking that money and success is actually going to bring more value to your life. And I think you might live in a nicer house, you might drive a nicer car, you might eat a little bit of better food, but in the States, I don't care. I mean, you drive the best cars in the world. You live in the best houses in the world. You eat the best food in the world.
It's true.
You're just kind of changing addresses,
So if I would ask you, what are your personal values?
By the way, that's really depressing if you're trying to build a business.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't think it's depressing because the drive doesn't go away.
No.
When I was starting my construction company, I had people tell me all the time, you're not qualified, you don't have any money, you'll never make it, this is ridiculous, there's too many guys bigger than you, and it went in one ear and out the other. When you have a drive, you have a drive. It didn't matter. Matter of fact, it made me have more drive.
I still remember that story about your first building. I mean,
Yeah,
I
let's
even
not tell that
people
publicly to the whole world.
A great story, though.
I haven't seen
Great
it still
story.
standing in downtown L.A. Let's talk about you, Joe.
Okay.
Deflection. Let's talk about your values. What gives you, what is the meaning of your life? I mean, what brings you meaning? What values do you have? Why do you believe you're here? That kind of thing.
Well, because I'm a believer, obviously I believe that I have a purpose, right?
What does that mean, you're a believer?
I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, to give my life to the Lord. Probably at the age of 27. I always tell people I lived the life in the world, and I did a pretty good job at it. I wouldn't say it was miserable. It was miserable for a time, but I had a lot of good times as well. I was successful at it in the eyes of people, right? But I've lived a life as a Christian, somebody who devotes that really seeks the Bible to see how to live life. And that has been more valuable to me and a better outcome than the way I was living before. If the way I lived before was so great, I would have continued it. And clearly it was not. And so this has been much better for me, for my relationships, for my kids, my grandkids, my friends, on and on. So
then the meaning of your life is what?
The meaning of my life, not to get too philosophical, but honestly, the meaning of my life is I've given my life to something, and it's very simple to me. The Bible is very simple. I've been commanded to do certain things, to feed the hungry, to visit those in prison, to clothe those that are naked, those things. I see those very plain, to participate in that. And the other thing is to seek people that are lost, tell them the gospel, tell them about salvation. And then, everything else kind of comes from that. I've always been a believer in the more you know Jesus, All those things are a byproduct of knowing him.
Mm-hmm.
So the more I seek him, the easier those things become. When I take my focus in business as well, when I take my focus off of him, those things become more difficult to serve others, to do those things. It just does. For me, anyway.
I was listening to someone say recently that the one trait that people don't mention more as much as they should in building a business is integrity. Everybody has a strategy, everybody has this system, their method, but integrity is one of those values that seems to be tolerated, but yet it is profoundly important in building any kind of organization. Do you feel like that's been part of your success?
Oh, absolutely.
Why is that so important?
Well, when I take a look at other systems, the banking industry, the housing industry, I mean, there have been some catastrophic failures, right? 2008, for example.
Yes.
2008 was created by a bunch of guys that went to university to learn things the way they did things there. I don't know about today, but there isn't much value put on integrity in the classroom. It's get successful.
Yeah.
How does that look? Invest, get in debt, those type of things, right? I've yet to talk to somebody who said, man, I went to school, I went to this university, and they taught me something real. They taught me about being out of debt, and they taught me about saving your money, and you just don't hear that.
Right.
And so in our company, and the way I live my life is, I want to go to bed. I don't want to worry about something. Oh, this guy named Earl Hall, I think he said it best. He goes, Joe, the reason I don't lie? I'm like, why is that, Earl? He goes, because then I don't have to remember what I said. And I thought, man, that's smart.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a very good memory.
Right.
And the last thing I want to do is try to remember all these things that I failed on, or half-truths, or try to make up stuff just to accomplish something. It's just not that important.
Do you feel like you have a good handle on what your personal gifts are? Do you know what makes Joe good at what Joe does?
Well, I know what people tell me I'm good at, and then I know by my wife what I'm not good at. No, I know the things I know the things that I'm not good at, which kind of shows me what I'm decent at. Right?
Yeah. So is it important that they have all these? My wife is always trying to get me to do all these gift assessments and this survey and this thing, and there's a million of them out there. I never fill them up, but she does. And how important? And you hire people all the time, by the way.
Right.
So do you feel like it's important for people to know their gift set to be able to be successful in a career?
Yeah, absolutely. We do what's called a caliper test.
Yeah.
Which is it's not a personality test, but it's an assessment, and it tells you kind of what your strengths are and what your weaknesses. I never believed in that. And then a buddy of mine told me, hey, you might want to try this when you hire somebody. And I'm like, I have a pretty good eye for people, I can figure it out. I'll tell you, I've probably used it it's got to be at least 100 times. And very rarely is it wrong. Those assessments do a pretty good job.
So let them know this is not their bus.
Yeah,
this is where they should be.
And it's not a pass or fail. It could be, your sense of urgency is not that strong. Out of 100, you might score 30, right? But your attention to detail might be 80.
Oh.
So what that tells me is, okay, you want to make sure this thing's done right before you give it to me. However, you're not going to give it to me in my timeline because you're going to wait till it's done right. So when you assess those things, it really kind of gives you an insight to the way this person thinks. And then from that, you can tell them, hey, this is your gifts, getting detailed stuff done. So let's work on this part of getting it to me on time, type of thing.
You actually made an incredibly profound statement that I loved the other night when he was at MTech. By the way, MTech, I'll have the link below, is our leadership academy for entrepreneurs. People have a desire to start businesses. And so you can look it up. We have a website that'll be listed below. But you were a speaker at MTech. And you made a comment that I want you to say, because there's a lot of folks who are starting businesses. They're hiring employees. Some employees aren't cutting it. They're not making it.
Right.
And so tell me your philosophy when you know someone's just not in the right place and they got to go.
So my philosophy came from an experience, right? And so early on in my career, actually, When I started my agency, there were 3 of us. And
how many now are there in the agency?
Between the different ones, a little more than 50 probably.
Okay.
And so there was this gal in our office, and she was a single mom, struggled a little bit financially. She'd been with me for a couple of years, and some things transpired where I knew I had to let her go. But as a Christian businessman, I thought, wait a second, she's a single mom. She's going to be suffering. She's has a house payment. She's got a car payment. What is she going to do? And so I probably kept her for a little too long. And then it's like the Lord spoke to me, and he said, are you her provider? Are you her healer? Are you the one that she relies for success?
That's good.
And I was like, ugh, right? And I was like, time out. I am not anybody's healer, provider. I'm none of that.
Yeah.
You got to go. And I let her go the next day. And so that's kind of how I've learned, is that people don't belong to me. They don't belong to me. And I think we talked a little bit about churches getting into that, right? They don't belong to us.
Right.
And it's happened to me with some employees where they kind of reach their max in our company. And I sit down with them and I tell them, hey, you know what? You're a great employee. You do a great job, but you've kind of reached your max. You've got to go out.
Yeah.
And so I've let some people go. Some gal, not too long ago, a person in our office came up to me and said, Joe, I need your permission. So think about this. I'm the employer. She goes, I need your permission to apply somewhere else. And in my office, she came in. And I'm like, what are you asking? And so she goes, this company is looking for somebody, and I want to apply. And I'm like, you're a gifted person. I think that would be a great position for you. I think it'll take you to the next level. God bless you. How about it?
Wow.
And so it really adds a lot of freedom, right? Knowing that you're not the one holding all the cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is a pretty biblical principle. What if Jesus hadn't sent out the 70? Like, you know what? You're my guys. You need to stay with me.
Israel first.
Yeah.
Exactly.
First. That really is a biblical perspective.
I mean, I didn't read it in the Bible and say, it was by an experience, right?
Yeah.
And so my life's motto is hold on loosely. I tell my wife, hold on loosely. You know that song, the 80s, right?
I do.
Hang on loosely.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
But I tell my wife, hey, honey, worst case scenario, we lose all this financial stuff. We go back to our first apartment and we go back to eating, der Wiener Schnitzel at 10 o'clock at night with a coupon. It wasn't that bad. We actually remember that fondly. It was fun days, right? Not that I would enjoy that today, but I'm just saying. It was fun. Yeah.
Now, you told me before the show started, you're getting ready to start a podcast.
Oh,
tell us about your podcast.
One of the things I consider doing, and through this transition of like, what's the next thing for me?
Right.
I've been able to work with a lot of entrepreneurs out there and guys that really build successful businesses in the wine industry, in the ag industry, in the auto industry. And a lot of these guys have stories that are incredible. I mean, they've come from nothing. I have some guys that only speak Spanish. Their English is very broken, but they're multimillionaires, right?
Right.
Very successful.
Right.
And it's like, wait a second, how in the world did you come to this country, build a business, and this is where you're at today?
Yeah.
And it's not even your first language, right? I ran into a client of mine recently, and so he does a lot of business here, and he does a lot of business internationally. In Mexico is one of the places he does a lot of business. And so I asked him, hey, and I was waiting for an answer. I said, hey, tell me, would you say it's easier, you could be more successful in the United States or in Mexico? Where would you find success easier for you? He, without blinking, he looked at me, he goes, Joe, I'd be successful anywhere. And I'm like, well, that's pretty arrogant, right? Mm-hmm. But what he was saying to me is, it's not the laws and things that are in place, it's just, do I have an opportunity? If I have an opportunity, I can make it happen. And I'm like, that's a great perspective. Yeah. It's like, drop me off in India, I'll be successful. Yeah. And I think as an entrepreneur, that's the entrepreneur drive.
Yes.
Right? I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
That's always been our motto at the office is, guys, we think outside the box and we'll figure it out.
I think some of the greatest industries we're going to see in the next 20 years haven't even been started yet.
Oh, absolutely.
And so this is going to be exciting. So I can't wait to hear your podcast, and we'll talk about it more and list it. And by the way, if someone has a question for you about getting in the insurance industry, are you okay with us putting a link with your company and have them call?
Give me a call. I'll tell you why you should do it and why you shouldn't.
Okay.
I'll tell you my biggest thing is there's a phone next to you. If you can pick it up and ask somebody to buy insurance and it doesn't bother you if they say no, might be something for you as an agent. If not, you better stay away. That's just as far as an agent, right?
Okay.
But the industry is big and there's all sorts of opportunities.
That's awesome. Give me some parting words for, again, I see this rising up of young entrepreneurs, and it's inspiring to me. They're different than I was when I was a young guy, but they're just as aggressive in the spirit. So just give them just kind of a Joe Martinez pep talk of what you would say to a young person who really wants to pursue an industry. What would you say to them?
You know, I would probably say the first one you choose, you're probably going to fail at. The second one you choose, you're probably going to fail at. It might be the third or fourth that you're going to be successful at. Everybody's heard the words, don't give up. In my career, and I hear this often, is that 5 years into somebody's career, you're just kind of at the brink of making it, but you experience some failures. So you want to go back to what was comfortable and go back to that was safe. I would say just push it. I mean, honestly, in this life, short-lived. Take a chance, risk it, lose it. It's okay. In this country, thank God we have an opportunity to continue to pick yourself up, move on, and continue. It might not be the first, second, third, fourth, but eventually it's worth doing. Even in the failures, I've learned some of my greatest lessons in failures that I've had, not the successes I've had.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, you've been an incredible guest. I really appreciate you coming to our show.
Thanks for having me, Rini.
Yeah, and make sure, by the way, you share this with your friends, you subscribe, hit the little bell down there, and remember, what issues, what kinds of industry, what kind of people do you want to hear about? Because we will discuss any topic on How in the World podcast, but you as our listener need to tell us. And so please continue to comment, share this with a friend, and we'll see you next time on the How in the World podcast. Hey, Rini M. Charest here. I hope you liked it, and there's plenty more to come on this channel. Make sure you click to subscribe and like and share. Go ahead. Click to subscribe. Now. Just do it. That little thing in the corner. Click it. Oh, forget it. I'm out of here.